Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we try hard to find positive things going on in public education. And one of the positive things that we have in public education is the focus on special ed. We are one of the only countries in the world that accepts all kids, no matter how disabled. We accept all kids in our public education environments. And one of the special ed disabilities that we work with is the Autism Spectrum. And I thank Miss Maxwell, who is here today. She reminded me that April is Autism Awareness Month, and why did we not do a podcast on that? And so perfect, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
April.
It's April, last day.
And we have had a lot of experience working with autistic kids and kids on the spectrum. Matter of fact, our Plano school has 12% special ed, and out of that 12%, I think quite a few of them are autistic. Matter of fact, Plano parents have liked the way that we work with our autistic kids and have encouraged friends to enroll there as well. We also have several autistic kids in Mesquite, even though we don't have as many. I think we're 8% special ed in Mesquite. But so let's see who's here today. First, let's do our intros, and then let's get started.
I'm Stacy Maxwell. I'm the Academic Systems Director for Legacy.
I'm Zach Maxwell. I'm her son.
I am Mr. Pagan, and I'm an English language arts teacher in Legacy Plano.
All right, so let's find out why we have gathered you here today. Ms. Maxwell?
Well, I specifically asked for Mr. Pagan to come on and myself because we are autism parents, and so we have dealt with the autism world and continue to deal with it. And as both of us have said before, autism has changed our lives.
Well, yes, it's changed it, and we're going to talk a little bit about how it's changed it and what our audience can take away from this information. Because as I was sharing with you, I know that out of our audience, many people will listen to this podcast today and share information with family members, with friends, because autism is, it's not an unusual occurrence anymore. I think they're finding because we find it better. What's a better way of saying that?
I think because they changed it from a single diagnosis to putting it on a spectrum, I think that we're having more kids diagnosed than in the past. And when you look at the spectrum, you have a wide range of kids on it. We have, high functioning to very low functioning nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And, it's just a new way of looking at it.
Well, and I think we live in a world that's much more accepting
Yes.
of our kids on the spectrum. You triggered a thought as you were talking. I know. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the successes that we've had before we start delving into your stories, and really encourage parents to think of those family and friends that they have who have kids on the spectrum, to understand these kids have a normal life expectancy as far as careers and so forth. We had a young man last year who graduated last year from Plano. Mm-hmm. He'd been with us 2 years. He had been in a full least restrictive environment in a major ISD. His father didn't like that. He brought him to us. We had him in a least restrictive environment, i.e. he really did project work with kids his age, and he ended up being prom king,
And he did dual credit.
And he did dual credit. He's now going on to college. So luckily the dad in this case had high expectations for his son. And a lot of times it's the schools that have it, but in this case it was the dad. We also had another graduate from that group who had been with us for 5 years. She came to us bullied from another ISD, and by the time, actually she came like in December of that first year. By May, she was singing Elvis at our talent show. That's how comfortable, she was feeling with us that first year she was with us. And then she graduated again to go on to college. So,
right. And she's another one that did dual credit, and she was a leader at the campus.
Yes. So we need to understand it well enough to have high expectations. So talk a little bit about, how did you know?
So in our case, we had already had 2 children previously, and everything was normal. And, Zach was a pretty normal kid, and we just thought he was kind of quirky. He was one of those babies, we took him to the doctor, he got his shots, he didn't cry. We're like, yeah, good boy, you're tough, everything. And we didn't really notice anything. So he goes off to kindergarten for his first year of schooling. He hadn't been pre-K, went to kindergarten, and his kindergarten teacher had been a former preschool special ed teacher. And so she called me in October for the October parent-teacher conferences and started sharing her concerns. And then his behaviors in school just continued to get more bizarre and things like that. He'd go under the table when he got stressed. His kindergarten teacher shares this story where she kept on wanting him to have fresh new crayons because he would always peel the paper off his crayons. Well, then we come to find out he has an aversion to paper. So he was peeling the paper off his crayons so he wouldn't have to do
types
it.
Of paper.
So Zach was not officially diagnosed until he was 8 years old by a psychiatrist. But
is that because he was functioning well enough, or because the school didn't want to test him?
We tested him, and because he was verbal, they did not place him on the autism diagnosis for school. And it took us until December to get him diagnosed with autism through the school.
Are those sort of old traditional ways of looking at autism that have now changed?
To a certain extent. The qualifiers for the education setting are higher than the qualifiers for a medical setting. So even though I took my psychiatrist diagnosis into the school, they did not have to accept it. So from there, they had him diagnosed as an emotional disorder, and he was receiving special ed services. However, my fight for the autism, and it seems weird that I would have to fight to get this label on my kid, but the way that people approached a kid with an emotional disturbance label and the way people approach an autistic kid are so much different. Because yes, and so that fight, it took me 5 years, and finally through the school in December they finally diagnosed him on the autism spectrum. And then through that, it was amazing because during his ARD, everyone came out and they're like, oh, we can do this for you and this for you and this for you. So until he got that label on him, all the doors were closed. As soon as he got that label, everything opened up.
That's not a happy story.
But it's often what people go through. And I've talked to other autism parents, and luckily I have the educational background behind me, and then I have fabulous people at Legacy who I can go ask questions to. But I've talked to other parents, and they have worse struggles than I do. And I talk to them, I'm like, no, the schools can't do that. They can't.
Yeah, you become an advocate.
Yeah, I start becoming an advocate for these people, and it's amazing what a lot of people that don't have that educational background don't know.
Right. So, Zach, talk a little bit about your school experience. And thanks for being on, by the way.
No problem. Well, my school experience overall has been pretty sucky. It's
Okay.
Am I wrong?
Well, it's okay. You can be honest.
Keep going.
I've had to deal with lots of things throughout my school career. I'd say 5th grade was like one of my good years, one of the only good years.
What made it good?
Well, I had friends, I was more aware of my condition, and um, I don't know, it's just something set off in my brain that year, and I just had a really good year.
Cool. How old are you? I think we forgot to say.
12.
Okay, I think that's important because you look a little bit older than that. Judging by your shoe size, which is also 12. So I wanted people to know that.
Probably be 13 when I'm 13.
Well, probably. So have things changed since they accepted your autism diagnosis?
Oh, yeah, a lot
How?
of things have changed. I haven't noticed it myself because I don't notice much. I didn't notice much change, but when I started getting into the arts, it was more noticeable then.
So you're taking part in the arts now?
Uh-huh.
And why is that important to you?
Well, because my mom doesn't really know what I think. I'm unpredictable to her, so.
Okay.
So
Well,
when I go to the arts and they try to suggest something, and my mom agrees with it, but I don't agree with it, I'm there to veto it.
okay. Okay. But you're there to say yes to other things, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just as long as you still let us help you, because you still have a little bit left to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to compromise, and that's something that we've been talking a lot about. We have to compromise, but if he knows that something's not going to work for him, it's better for him to say, that's not going to work, and here's why. And he's been really active in his arts lately.
All right. That's good to hear. And I'm sure there are parents who hadn't thought to have their kids in ARDS that are listening today. So that's a good reminder. Mr. Pagan, tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
Well, I'm here because I have a daughter that's on the spectrum. She's currently 4 years old, and she was diagnosed when she was about 1.5 years. Basically, this just like Miss Maxwell said, we didn't really notice at first that she had anything that was atypical. It was our first daughter. My wife and I we had never had kids before, so I guess everything was kind of normal in the beginning. Like, I thought every step was going just the way it was supposed to go. Until my sister had a child as well, and long story short, about a year after, we started seeing some things. I started seeing my niece do all these amazing things, and my child was not doing them yet. I'm like, well, that's kind of strange because my child's almost a year older, so she should probably at least some of these milestones should have already been completed. So one thing leads to another, and we have a new doctor, and he was actually the first one to really tell us. He saw her one day in one of our appointments, and he said, "Hey, Pagan, I believe your daughter's on the spectrum. I think you guys should consider seeing a neuropsychologist and a geneticist just to make sure." So at first we go home like, what, on the spectrum? I mean, for real? I coming to think of it, yeah, there's some things that are a little strange, but I don't really think so. But we did it. We listened to the professional. We trust our doctor very much. In Puerto Rico, by the way, I was in Puerto Rico. So we started doing our that's I would say that's the day our adventure started, and practically our life changed forever, because not too long after that, our neuropsychologist diagnosed our daughter with autism. Yeah.
And so how did your life change after that?
Well, it changed a lot because as parents, I think we have so many expectations for our children. We have so many dreams, we have goals, and I mean, our kids don't even have big goals yet, and we already have them for them sometimes. And as a parent, you want your child to be independent. You want them to be able to grow up and be strong, because one day, sometimes you always feel like one day I might not be there, so I want my child to be able to survive. And as a parent also, I mean, we just want our children to be as healthy as possible, right? So our life changed a lot. I mean, from just worrying about maybe taking my child to school, now it was a lot more. Our schedule was packed. We had to go to school in the morning, or to pre-K in her case, And then in the afternoon, we had to take her to ABA therapy, and it was just all these different things, you know? She was taking therapies, she was doing things at pre-K, going to all kinds of different doctors, neuropsychologists, geneticists, neurologists, all kinds of different exams and things.
Did they have you do anything different with your daughter?
Like
Any therapies or what?
yes, the therapy that that the neuropsychologist told us that we should work really hard to find for our daughter was ABA therapy, which stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. It's a therapy that up to this point it's research based, and it's been proven to be very effective for children on the spectrum.
What does it do? It moves them higher along the spectrum to higher functioning?
Yes, that's like the goal. Like they're gonna be doing certain activities with their therapist, and it's supposed to help them be able to do certain activities that maybe in a normal therapy, like occupational or even at school, they won't be able to do just as easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you start that in Puerto Rico and then come here and finish it?
Yes, we started in Puerto Rico. In fact, we moved to Texas because of the necessity, because it was very expensive in Puerto Rico. Like you couldn't really find a lot of therapy centers with the therapy, and the ones that we found were really expensive.
Okay. So it changed your life in the fact that you came to Texas.
We came to Texas. Yes, that's true.
All right. Well,
Completely
welcome.
changed
You
our
came
life.
to Legacy. We love that.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Zach, talk a little bit. You have something else besides being on the spectrum. You have hyperlexia. Can you?
That is more a part of the spectrum.
Okay. Train me. Tell me.
That's more a part of the spectrum than it is a different disorder.
Okay.
Because it is shown that most people on the spectrum do have hyperlexia, which just means they know how to read. They weren't taught or anything.
So what? Tell me what you told me earlier. Tell our audience about your reading skill.
Oh, well.
Did you have to learn it?
No, I didn't have to learn it.
Why not?
I have no idea. If I knew that, I would definitely be telling you.
So I guess what I'm trying to imply is that you just knew how to read.
Yeah.
Nobody had to train you to read. That's amazing.
They never worked on it with me. I just knew.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's amazing what the human brain can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the fact that he was 3 years old and turning over video game boxes and reading the vocabulary on a video game box. So,
which is similar to cartoon and comic book, which is very
Yeah,
high level. A
it
lot of
is.
people, say,
Extremely.
comic books are for kids. No. Comic
Yeah.
books have very high language and vocabulary in there. So, what do you wish, Zach, that your teachers knew more about you and how to work with you? What if you had your teacher sitting here right now and you could tell her, this is how I'd love for you to work with me better? What would you tell them?
I don't know what to tell them because I'd never really seen a problem with how they treated me in school, because treating a person on the spectrum like a normal kid within a social environment, it kind of just disguises them and blends them in, so there's no stigma or anything.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that your schools and your teachers have been very good at making you feel like you're just part of the class, and they're not isolating you. That's fantastic. I don't know that all schools have teachers like that.
In an exception, one of the students did isolate me once. They segregated me from the table. It was.
I'm sure that you helped them with that, right?
Yeah, we work on it.
Yeah,
we work on it.
That's a constant thing.
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Maxwell, talk a little bit about what is different in your home. What you said you had two kids who were not on the spectrum, your first two.
Yes.
And then Zach came.
Yes, and he has a younger brother too. So what is different from our house from a normal house is basically we have to adapt and change to Zach. And Zach has certain behaviors. He has some stimming behaviors that go on. He has some aggression issues, social anxiety, those kind of things. So everyone in the family just steps in and tries to help out with those things, but they also know what his triggers are. They know, and he is a runner, so he will run away from us, and they all know, well, if he runs, he's going to this certain spot, and we work with him to get through some of these things. My older two kids, who are now adults, they talk to him about the future, and they talk to him about what you want to do, what kind of job are you going to get, things like that. But every single one of my children has been affected by autism. The one that's probably been affected most is my youngest, because growing up behind a child with autism, you have some learned behaviors. So since Zach would stim, or Zach would be physically aggressive with kids and stuff like that, then Evan would follow suit. And so like he's in special ed just for the learned behaviors. So
Really?
yeah, so his teachers can deal with the learned behaviors that he has behind the autism.
So, Zach, I understand that you have a hobby. You like acting?
Yeah, I do. On stage, I'm like a different person because normally I have a lot of social anxiety and I don't talk to strangers much, which is, but like on stage I can be a totally different character. And
How did you first find out that you would be comfortable on stage?
well, I first wanted to do theater when I saw my sister's show. She did one in the Rockwell Community Playhouse, and then I wanted to try it. So my mom signed me up for a workshop where I would get a guaranteed role, and I started to gradually like theater more and more, and she would sign me up for workshops.
What roles have you played so far?
Oh my God, you don't want me to get into that.
Well, you can just say the
Why-
roles. You don't
why-
have
4 different types of wolves.
He's been
Okay.
typecast.
Oh, as a wolf?
Yeah, so he's been played a wolf in his first one, which was a fairy tale one, and then played a wolf on Aesop's Fables, and then he did a play for middle school and played a wolf, and then
What are
his
the
last
odds?
one he played the wolf in A Lion, a Witch, and the Wardrobe. So
Okay.
it was just, I think it's like 4 out of 6. You've been the wolf or something like that.
I don't think I think it's 4 out of 5 actually.
Yeah. So it's,
Okay. Well,
Because
so
I did Wonderland and I wasn't.
Yeah.
There's no wolf there.
what would you like to do in the future? What are you thinking is a career choice for you?
I want to run my own company where I can make video games.
Okay. And what makes you think you're good at that?
I've made one in the past.
Okay. Is that in school? Do you have a video class?
No, I made it in my free time.
Okay.
how old were you?
I think about 8.
And you launched it into beta?
I launched it into beta and then quickly thereafter I released it.
Okay.
But I didn't know how to format properly, so the files were all over the place, and that just caused a lot of problems for the downloading. And
You're failing forward, right?
Mhm.
That's how you figure things out. So, how are you going to conquer those gaps of knowledge that you have in those areas?
well, I learned since then. I mean, it's been like what 4 years, I think. But yeah, I learned how to format things into files so that the right images and files can be put into the program. And I've also tried different programs, but like one that I consistently use is the one that I used when I first made a game.
Okay. Sounds like you have a good opportunity for a nice career ahead of you. Mr. Paigan, talk
Yes.
a little bit about your daughter, and I know that your expectations may have changed for her, but you still have high ones.
Yes, I do. Yes. Well, I guess just like Miss Maxwell and with Zach also speaking now, they mentioned there's certain areas that our children are really good at, like reading or creating something. And some of the things so far that I've noticed in my child is that she is very musical. Like sometimes I'll tell her to do something and she won't do it. If I sing it to her, she'll do it immediately.
Wow.
See, like I would like sounds, like I play the saxophone, and the minute she sees it, she starts looking inside of it. She's touching the instrument, and when I'm playing it, she gets all excited and she will even start dancing. She loves clapping. Anything that's musical, has a beat, she just loves it. And one of the things that are being considered is actually giving her musical therapy
Yeah.
to see how far they come. So I believe that if there's an area right now that I could really help my child in and that she can probably demonstrate a talent, it probably could be music.
You might ask the school that she's in
Definitely, yeah.
to at least gravitate more to more music. I was at Mesquite West today, and I heard the kids using the recorder in third grade, I think it was. And so you might see if the school can do things like that, or start her and her class, because learning to play an instrument is like learning another language.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good for the brain. Matter of fact, let me ask you, do you speak to her in Spanish
Yes.
and English?
So basically, I do the English talking and my wife does the Spanish talking.
So here we have a child who's been identified on the autism spectrum, and she's bilingual.
We're working on that because she's still nonverbal.
Oh, okay.
But she does make she does say some words in Spanish, some words in English, but she still doesn't use them like in the correct setting. She's just saying the words. And the sounds that she does, sometimes she does sounds, she'll be walking around the room, probably doing this with her hands, and then she'll just start making some sounds. Some of them I've identified them like English sounds, and some of them Spanish.
So I wonder, and I don't know if you already know this, I wonder if there is any research out there around bilingual or emerging bilingual kids on the spectrum.
That's a very good question, because I know that I've read research on speaking two languages at the same time to a child, where it says that it's perfectly fine and that there shouldn't be any problem. The brain automatically puts the correct words where they belong, so there can be effective code switching.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't be a problem at all. But on the spectrum, that's a really good question.
Yeah, it would be great to have your daughter take part in a research project with other bilingual kids on the spectrum.
I would have no problem with that. It's pretty good.
That'd be a great
Yeah, that would be
study.
really interesting.
Because it would have to be a longitudinal study to study these kids through maybe high school to see if the bilingual brain in autistic kids maybe helps them develop faster or higher on the spectrum, something like that, because it is proven that kids who speak more than one language have different brain patterns.
Yes. If it's going to help, if something like that can help her and future parents and children with autism, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to give you that as a homework assignment on top of everything. Well, the summer's coming up. You can do that during the summer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you should really maybe challenge some of your doctors that are working with your daughter to see if they know of any studies. Because they may be out there and we just don't know about them, but it could give you even more hope that
Definitely.
by continuing the use of the two languages with her, it will help her develop even faster into a verbal speaker.
Definitely.
So, Zach, what was one of the things I told you at the beginning before we started?
I don't remember.
You remember what does 30 minutes feel like?
5.
Yep. Guess what? We're 29 minutes in. We have 1 minute, and this is the Ask Dr. Be Good show. And so, do you have a question that you'd like to ask me?
No, not really.
Why did I know you were
Straightforward.
going to say that?
Straightforward.
All right, Mr. Paigan, you have a question for me?
Yes. I'll ask a question. So, how, as a superintendent,
Mhm.
right? How do you think maybe our school can be even more powerful in helping children on the spectrum? What can we do?
I think that we need to continue our training with teachers. One of the things that we need to get better at, not only at Legacy, but in all schools, even private schools, even ISDs, is to have teachers who are trained to the point where they can differentiate, and no matter who's in their classroom, they can impact kids. So while the GTs are over here and the struggling learners who may not necessarily be special ed, but just struggling because maybe they're ESL right now. They just got here last year. That's a different group. And then you have your spectrum. You have learning disabled that are not spectrum. You have all that going on. But if we can get teachers to know how to function better in those type of environments, because those environments are not going away. As we get better at identifying kids, we need to get better at learning what their needs are and how to serve them. We should be proud of the fact that in the United States we serve all kids. What we need to get prouder at is learning how to serve them even better, so that everybody's growing. The GTs are growing, the SPEDs are growing, the ESLs are growing. Everybody's growing within their capacity without having 10 adults in the room, because that's just a luxury we're never going to have. But thank you for the question. I hope that you're finding that Legacy, I don't know if, were you a teacher in Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
You find that we do a lot of training in Legacy?
Yes, very helpful.
Yes. Differentiated instruction is something that we do all year because it's that important. So thank you for asking. Ms. Maxwell?
Well, just to
Double
add to
quick.
what you're saying too, because a lot of people don't realize that kids on the spectrum can actually be twice exceptional. So you can have a kid on the spectrum that's also GT. So then how
You're
are you going
exactly
to deal
right.
with that?
And we have that. We have GTs that are on the spectrum
spectrum.
and special ed. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
But my question for you is, what have we taught you about autism?
That's a good question. I'm pretty aware because I tend to walk the schools every week. I know who our autistic kids are, and I've seen the growth in our autistic kids. I brag on them all the time. But having somebody like Zach come in and he, the fact that he didn't have to learn how to read, he came in, born reading, so to speak.
Yes.
That caught me off guard. I hadn't heard
that
that
actually
one.
happened. I think I came out reading.
And think about what kind of brain does that, and how few brains do that, and how special that makes you in a special way. So I hope that I'm showing that I really work hard at making sure that all kids, and especially our special ed kids, get that extra attention. How do we know it's paying off? Well, we do have measurable ways. We have the PBMAS, which is one of the ways that the state of Texas measures at-risk special ed, bilingual ESL, and if we get a 0, that would be the best score. We've gotten our special ed scores from a 3 to a 1 last year. We're hoping to hit that magic 0, but that means that we're working with the kids in the way they need to be worked with. And so, matter of fact, in our 5th and 8th grade scores that came in yesterday, we saw that even those kids, and some of them were ELLs or ESLs, and some of them were special ed, even if they didn't meet the passing score, they still met required. That they still grew. They grew enough to count it as a pass. So that means that whatever we're doing, those extra, we spend lots of money on tutors, math tutors, ESL tutors, special ed tutors, TAs, to be working one-on-one with our kids, that it's actually paying off. And so, and how's that going to pay off in the future? These kids are going to help pay taxes. Zach, you're going to help pay taxes for when we're old. And we need for you to have as good an education and as good a job to help do that. So we thank you for continuing to be in school and to continuing to have that career goal for yourself. We need your tax money. All right, everyone.
Thanks for your money.
We thank you for being on here and for talking about something that's very close to your hearts. But you know what? It shouldn't be a secret, right?
No,
It
No.
is.
not at all.
So we thank you for coming on.
Mom believes that thoroughly. She never kept my condition a secret.
And it should not be. So thank you. And we'll be here next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.